And the broadcast is live. Phil Tarrant, Tom Panos, Real Estate Exposed. We're moving into summer, spring selling season at least, cracking along right now. Tom, how's the auction environment? What's going on? What happened last weekend? Good, bad, indifferent?
15 out of 15. I thought the market was going to be impacted. I was absolutely convinced that it was going to be. And the reason I say that, Phil, is that there is a large number of stock that has hit the market. And in addition to that, there has been some negative articles from APRA, which we spoke about last week. And I was really, really, really certain, Phil, that this market was going to be impacted. It still can get, but what I can't get over is that it's not just me. Every anecdotal conversation I'm having is sort of saying, it's still hot. Hi to everyone that's coming on. Luke Moroney always starts off saying buy, buy, buy. Of course he does. He's a buyer's agent. Alex Skipper, good to see you. Alan Galeb, one of the great real estate agents in the northern districts. APRA looking to soften things. That's what they wanted. I mean, that was the intention of it, Phil. And you have a view. You said it last week that you believe it will impact. It will impact the marketplace. But the question is when and by how much?
Yeah, it's a good question. And just to reiterate what those changes are in really, really simple ways, APRA, which is the regulatory body, make the rules for finance. They've told the banks to lift the way they lift the criteria, increase the criteria of how they assess someone's serviceability. So, if you pay an interest rate of 3%, the bank used to add 2.5% to that. So they assessed you at a 5.5% mortgage. What APRA has gone and said lift it up by another 0.5 percentage point. So now banks will be assessing you with 3% on top of whatever the loan that you're getting right now. So that's reality. APRA's got involved in this market beforehand. If you think back to 2017, they wanted to take a heat out of the market at a point in time when investors were in there driving up a lot of demand, pushing it forward. And that had a lot of effect. One of the big criticisms at that point in time was that APRA intervention was national when it just really needed to target two different markets, but it slowed the market down. Market moved sideways, went backwards in many ways. COVID hit. Now we're back in this accelerated growth phase. So this is where we are. APRA is involved. It will slow down lending. It will slow down the number of buyers in the market at certain price points because they're not able to borrow as much money. That's the effect they want. And I think it's quite prudent that APRA is operating in this regards because Australians aren't doing themselves. Now, Tom, we all know right now, as in October 2021, family balance sheets are as strong as they ever have been. Company balance sheets are very strong as well as a result of COVID. People haven't been spending money at a personal level. So there's a fair bit of money washing around right now, and people are out there buying property. Put that into context, there's been very little stock on market, hence the reason why we've had this market demand up until now. Starting to soften, Tom, but you're still getting 100% auction clearance rates. The market isn't slowing down yet. I haven't seen it. I think you're going to start seeing the intervention on APRA to try and slow down the market through increasing serviceability requirement. You're going to see that impact come April and May of next year once we wash through all this pepped up demand that's out there right now to buy property. That's my view. That's my read. I'm just a humble real estate journalist, mate, trying to get by, knocking out some articles and get the occasional free beer from someone to try and get some intel from them. You're a lot more informed than I am. Are you saying the same? April, May next year, we'll start seeing the impact?
Maybe, Phil. I'm not 100% certain, and one of the reasons is that I learned many years ago there is not a real estate market anymore. There is real estate submarkets that make up a total real estate landscape, but you can actually have various aspects of those submarkets performing differently. Example, property types, units versus houses versus duplexes versus land. You then also have the geography submarkets. You also have price point submarkets. And I've already had feedback, Phil, that from a number of people that have worked in other periods where there have been serviceability tightening. And Phil, it appears that some buyers are impacted more than others, and those that are impacted, Phil, often rely on a thing called mortgage insurance. And mortgage insurance actually ends up putting people in pretty much the same spot they were, but they've actually got to pay for that privilege, right? And that has happened in previous years. But Luke Moroney's put there, are there lower numbers at opens and auctions? I'd rather get the audience to answer that. So, anyone out there, I'd love you to tell us what has been the impact in the first 1 week of the APRA announcement. Um, and Phil, all I'll say to you, at the moment, it appears that houses are still, super hot. They're well in demand. I have had real estate agents tell me there's been a few less buyers coming in to some of the areas out in the western suburbs of Sydney. Jim, who is obviously a buyer here, my loan was reassessed due to the changes 5 weeks after the application. Things have changed now. And this is actually coming from someone that's watching this that's actually not in the industry, but is actually a purchaser, I would presume. So there's first-hand experience. Jim uh,
Yeah.
uh, has got obviously a new limit.
Well, this is it, and we went through last week buyers. Winners and losers as a result of this. First-home buyers, it's going to shape the way in which they're buying. They either need to find bigger deposits to still meet the same purchase price they wanted, or they need to reassess their buying capabilities, or whether they can borrow and therefore maybe move suburbs. They might need to move another suburb out as a result of this because they can't purchase the property at the price that they were able to afford. So this is all happening now, Tom. It's going to play out. It's not going to go away quickly. Be connected, be tuned. To your point, Tom, around lenders' mortgage insurance, I think one of the most misunderstood insurances in property, and we've got a lot of property investors watching this or listening to this, as well as real estate agents. LMI, lenders and mortgage insurance, insures the lender on the basis that you default on the loan and they need to sell the property and they want to make sure they get the money back. So it's insurance for the lender. It means you can borrow at higher LVRs, 90+%. And a lot of people do this strategically, particularly first-time buyers and first-time investors, Tom, because it means you can get into the market today. Yes, you need to pay a premium for it, on a 300, I'm going to get these numbers wrong, 400 grand, you're probably going to drop about 6 or 7K in lenders mortgage insurance. But in this market, one extra month in the market, you're probably going to make that money back straight away on capital growth. So understand how LMI can be a utility for you to get you in the market faster and therefore realize the benefits. But it's going to slow it down a bit, Tom. But we've got to not look through, one lens at this particular market, because we now know Australia's opening up. We spoke about it last week. New South Wales is leading the charge in opening New South Wales up, and therefore Australia, to international travel in November. First cab off the rank. A lot of Australian citizens and their families are going to be flooding back to Australia. You're going to see a lot of expats who have been waiting to get back, coming back into the market. They're either going to rent or buy pretty quickly. That's going to change market dynamics. And then subsequent to that, you're going to see students coming back in to fuel the universities, which are a huge driver of economic growth, and also tax receipts for the government. So everyone's highly incentivized to get students back in. What does that mean? More people in rental properties. And then you're going to get this wave over time as Australia kickstarts its immigration program. We're so short of skilled workers in Australia to help drive the economy forward. So we've got to remember right now, these APRA restrictions are operating inside an isolated bubble that is Australia with its borders up. When that opens up, you're going to get a whole bunch of new buying intent coming to the market, or at least for new migrants that come into Australia. Typically, they rent to start with, so it's not bad for property investors, mate. This is all going to happen, and I've seen a lot of people try and channel what that might look like moving forward. But even the economists are going, we just don't know how it's going to play out, mate.
Yeah, well, on that issue about labour shortages in the workforce, what has really surprised me is the amount of businesses that actually now legally can be operating and having a lot more people, for example, restaurants, cafes in there. I know of 3 instances in my area in the West where the owners have chosen to continue providing only a smaller part of their full service, not because of the restrictions, but they simply cannot get staff. So the cafe that I go to regularly now is basically got the ability to actually serve a lot more people, but they can't get kitchen staff, and because they can't get kitchen staff, they're not actually putting out as many chairs out there. And the reason they're not putting out their chairs is that they're going to disappoint people. They're not going to be able to deliver the goods. So, Phil, this is a big thing. I actually laughed at it when Sanjay in London had said to me that there's been McDonald's stores in London that have closed down because they have no staff. All the staff have gone back to their countries. This is an issue that is highly dependent on the international borders opening up. And when we say international borders, Phil, we're not talking about returning Australians, which is what's been talked about in the last week or two. We're talking about people coming back here and working. We're not talking about, expats. We're talking about people. We're talking about all those uni students at Sydney Uni and what have you. So I feel there's
It's complicated, right? And we need to remember, Tom, that property is at the very heartbeat of Australia, and it has been and it always will be into the future. How property performs and the dynamics around it will determine and dictate how Australia continues to grow and evolve. And I don't know if you've tuned into it. You know that we had a really good chat. Alex Whitlock here, one of the co-directors with me at Momentum. I had a really good chat with the treasurer the other day, and this is one of the things they were talking about, right? But you think about that job that the treasurer has, trying to understand all of these different micro factors and how they all interconnect, and how they all go through sort of organizing them, sequencing them, putting them all together to make sure that the economy keeps firing along. Like, just imagine that job, Tom. We're talking about so micro. And one of my routines, Tom, I drop my kids off at school in the morning. I go straight to there's a service station nearby that's got one of those wild bean cafes there. I go in there, I order my coffee, and I go over to where the newspapers are and I quickly flick through them. It just gives me, my quick 1 second view on what's happening in New South Wales or Australia today. I normally look through the Australian and then also the Telegraph, which I like to read. And it just lets me know what the man on the street, what the woman on the street is up to. And one of the key stories I picked out of that today, Tom, to echo your sentiments, there was some cafe owner in Bondi who is providing $2,000 sign-on bonuses just to get a worker in his cafe. I think it's a pizza shop, sorry. So here we go. You put a job ad saying, I need people who can be waiters and waiters for this pizza shop. Can't get anyone. You'll get 3 people that call up to apply for the job. They never turn up for a job interview. Putting $2,000 cash as a sign-on bonus just to get these people there. We need skilled workers. We need workers in Australia doing these jobs. Otherwise, mate, it's a huge handbrake on the economy, and we've got to get rid of that pretty quickly.
all right. Now listen, let's spend 10 or 15 minutes talking digital today, Phil. And the reason I want to speak digital is that we've come out of lockdown. Well, Melbourne's doing it tomorrow. Well done, Melbourne. Having said that, I had one client say to me, Tom, Melbourne's officially coming out of lockdown. We actually went out of lockdown some time ago. People have been out and about moving along. It's just officially being done. But Phil, COVID clarity happened for vendors, happened for buyers, happened for a lot of people with their work. But it certainly happened in the real estate industry. And what's come out of COVID since March 2020 is that all these digital changes that we were always talking about, the buzzwords, innovation, has actually now, I've realized, it's not innovation. Even the dinosaur real estate office owners who would always shy away from change, and I've said it before, if you don't like change, you're going to really, really hate extinction, right? It appears that these people, the dinosaurs now, are using Docusign. The dinosaurs now are using pieces of technology which is set and forget. It's defaulted. It's no longer, for that cutting edge agent that wears a black t-shirt and white sneakers. We're talking about the agent that wears the old Lowe's shirts and the Hush puppy shoes are going off and using digital pre-list kits, or they're using, things like marketing campaigns that are provided by going onto an app and getting them financed, or, things like online auctions. I said to you last week that I was pretty certain that we were going back on site But what I didn't account for was people want on-site plus the option of not being at an on-site option, right? And that could potentially mean that you're watching it on Zoom or on Auction Live, Auction Now, Gavel, anywhere. There's lots of platforms. But what we're talking about is the fundamental issue that it appears there are certain things that happened during COVID that are going to stay after COVID. So, Phil, I'd love to maybe summarize some of those very quickly. We're not going to go do a deep dive on them. One of them, of course, is one we've spoken about before, which is PM software and managed. I think is the name of the product. You're very close to that. Just elaborate a little bit more on that. I've definitely seen clients talking about it a lot more than previously. What's the short 60-second version for those that haven't heard of Managed?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. And full disclosure, I'm an investor in Managed amongst some other people. Anyone go and check out the share registry, see who's in there. But I think there are people who see the vision for where real estate is going. And COVID, to be fair, has been a huge enabler for organizations like Managed and other tech platforms inside of real estate. And I think the catalyst for change, or the acceptance that change is coming and you need to embrace it quickly in order to accelerate business growth into the future, has been COVID clarity. I was chatting with some guys just the other day, pretty much saying something like Managed and some of these other tech platforms sort of inside of real estate to try and present them, integrate them, sell them inside of real estate 5 years ago, 10 years ago, would have been nearly impossible because of the attitude and aptitude towards technology then versus where it is now. And the Lowe's wearers, hush puppy guys, and girls, and there's nothing wrong with Lowe's. I wear Lowe's stuff. They've had to move on because you're uncompetitive if you're not leveraging technology. Tom, we've done some talking things out and about around the future of technology in real estate. High tech, high touch is terms we've used, and products like Managed, which is the first to market platform for the property management sector, which provides instant and direct payments. So essentially, it replaces the trust account. Is in the market, is gaining rapid traction for those agents initially, those that move quickly, realizing that is the future and that is where it's going to go. And again, I was chatting with some people the other day, and the real sort of example now for how agents have accepted change inside of real estate is this whole buy now, pay later phenomenon, where you look at Afterpay. What Afterpay is done in charging and changing and shaping attitudes towards finance inside of real estate, it's a huge boon. So there's so many different buy now, pay later type operators inside of real estate now, giving agents the capability to empower clients to either get better sales prices because they can borrow a few bucks to tart up a place before sale, or they can borrow a few bucks to stage something, and then for property investors to be able to increase their properties and do repairs and maintenance, all this sort of stuff. Huge enabler, and agents have embraced those tech-based agents who understand how technology can enable them, have flocked to that. And I use a very similar analogy when it comes to how property management is changing very, very quickly. Now, we only need to think back, and no doubt there's a lot of people listening to this right now, back in the day when property management software was all desktop, right? It plugged into a server and you had to be in the office to do it. I think thankfully the real estate sector worked out that they should shift to the cloud, but it even took COVID to get people to move to the cloud for their traditional property management software that sits inside trust accounts. So that transition was already happening. Managed, however, has completely changed the paradigm and now given a completely different option and opportunity for agents, for tenants, for landlords, and for tradies in a modern environment, modern ecosystem where you have instant and direct payments, Tom. It is transformational. It means that landlords get money into their bank account immediately, which they can stick against their offset. Great. Agents still get everything connected with the revenue stream through managing property. They can better support, better empower tradies. They can get better outcomes for landlords, and it helps tenants as well, mate. This is the future. And in many ways, there's a lot of horrible things around the COVID pandemic and the economic crisis that it's created, and many of the challenges that people have faced at a personal level. But it's changed real estate, and it's going to change it forever. And everyone now is getting their weight behind technology to sort that out. There's a pic here. There's a piece here. John Ryan. What is the name of the trust account system? Well, there's many trust account softwares out there. I'm talking about manedapp.com.au. You want to go and check it out.
Okay. So the next one is Docusign, right? And so, by the way, everyone, what works is anything in life that is fast, good, reasonably priced is normally a winner. Whether it's Uber, whether it's Spotify, fast, good, and then reasonably priced. So they're the three things that I think, because then everyone's a winner. Like if everyone's a winner, if all stakeholders win out of it, it means technology is actually helping, not harming. There have been plenty of pieces of technology that actually harm businesses because, who knows, glitchy, complicated, expensive. DocuSign, whether you're doing it direct or whether you're doing it through one of these legal platforms like Secure Exchange, where we're on our boat cruise, right now I can pretty much tell you, even the dinosaur officers simply are saying, I'm not going to drive off to the Central Coast to get a signature on a piece of paperwork, right? It's not going to happen. I'm sending out this email, bang, it's done. I'm not going to go off and worrying about, getting or sending COVID to someone where I can simply just go off and get this stuff signed. And people don't have to leave their job working at retail on a Saturday to sign a contract. They sign it on their mobile phone while they're at work. That's how easy it is. So DocuSign.
You've got a question, Tom, like why did it take COVID for people to rapidly accept this utility that has been there for many, many years? And we need to probably apply one part of this equation is that regulation and policy, whether it's state or federal, hasn't necessarily kept up with the speed of technology and innovation in technology. It's been really, really slow. And I only think about mortgages, Tom, where, before COVID, the broker had to sit down and eyeball someone in order for the transaction or the loan to be set. That was part of the compliance of it. At least now they've accepted digital technology to achieve the same process and still have the same rigor around that process, but you don't need to do it face-to-face anymore. It's leveraging technology. It took COVID to change the decision-making around it from the policy side of things. Same within real estate. That technology, the e-sign stuff's been around for 10 years, mate. Why hasn't it been accepted?
It's an interesting question. And I'll tell you, as you were talking, I was trying to come up with the answer. And one of the questions I asked myself is, why did it take cancer for me to change the way I lived and looked at life? Because I think what happens is you've got to actually go through a process and there's got to be consequences in that process, because if nothing really is going to change, if nothing changes, nothing changes, I think is probably a nice way to sort of summarize it. If nothing changes, nothing changes. So I think what happens is you've got to go through a process where you turn around and say, hey, we are suffering major consequences if we don't actually come up with a solution for this. So when you're not faced with that, it's pretty easy to just keep going with the flow, even though there is a better way to do it, and, there's a great question, Phil, that we can all ask in our business every day, and that is zero-based thinking. If I wasn't doing what I'm doing today, would I actually start this process in a business? And I actually urge every real estate operator to look at their business, their window display tomorrow, and walk through the office and say to themselves, if I was buying this business tomorrow, what would I keep and what would I change? And the truth is that every day you have the opportunity to make those changes to a business that you already own. You've just got to sit there and say, are these things that have happened because they once served a purpose? They no longer serve that purpose, but we still hold them? or has this had an expiry date? And what I'm doing is actually working with something that actually has got its use by date. And it's a really good process. This zero based thinking is a great question
Yeah.
to ask yourself in your business every day.
Oh, I think it's great, and you don't need to overcook that either. There's going to be some big questions that you probably need to ask, but there's smaller things as well, and you can actually action things on a daily basis. And I know, Tom, you've got sort of academic experience around sort of business coaching and all that sort of stuff. I've read a lot around it. There is so many books about it, but in a real simple idea, and what you said is ideal. You could do it immediately. I suggest you do it with your team. Get a whiteboard out, put 3 columns that says start, stop, keep, and then get everyone to do the individual exercise themselves, then go up and write it up on a whiteboard and look at it and have a discussion around it and a good briefing around it. You'll find there are certain things in your business that you can start today, you can stop today, and you can keep doing as you do. Really, really simple, 3 columns, go and do it. There's another sort of business term, Tom, which evolved out of military thinking, and this is the idea or the concept of red teaming. Where you have someone inside your organization. Sorry?
What's that? What's red teaming?
Yeah, red teaming. So it's the red team. So if you hark back to if anyone's seen a war movie, right, you'll see the good guys on a map are blue and the red guy and the bad guys are red. Think NATO Warsaw, right? Blue, red. So red teaming is that you need someone to play the role of the bad guys, the red teams. How are they going to scupper you? How are they going to stop you? How are they going to disrupt you in anything that you're doing? So there's a business concept called red teaming where you have it, whether it could be a large scale project, small project, whatever you're doing, get a team that tries to stop you doing what you're doing effectively and empower them to do that. And you role play scenarios, you go through it. There's a lot of, just Google it, you'll pick it up pretty quickly. But again, it's very similar to that whole idea of start, stop, keep, Tom. You can do that immediately with everything that you're doing inside your organization. Now, going back to technology, Tom, I think this really lends itself to it. And you could do it within the context of technology. But you made a very important point, Tom, and your personal analogy around it in terms of your journey with cancer. I think we've been given such an opportunity. Everyone in Australia has been given such an opportunity to use COVID as a flashpoint, an inflection point, a trigger point, whatever it is, to reassess what's going on. You only get these structurally delivered to you every now and then, so you should be embracing that change. Now, when it comes to technology and some of the reasons why we haven't embraced it as fast as what we should have as a real estate sector, there is that policy. There is that policy and regulation component of it, which has been a huge inhibitor for promoting change. Now, looking at the government, I'll think at a federal level, how quickly did they intervene? How quickly did the government get involved in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic in March? How quickly did they come up with that policy, which was JobKeeper, come out with that policy, to try and keep jobs and energize the economy? How fast did they make that happen? Why can't they do that with everything? Yeah. Why can't they do that with everything? And they don't. One of the biggest problems in real estate for embracing change, empowering agents, empowering property manager, is changing the legislation and the bureaucracy around it. They've shown us, the government, that they can move and they can move quickly when needed. What's happening in real estate right now, if they don't change the way in which the legislation, some of this legislation is 100 plus years old, Tom, before there was typewriters, right? How can they pave the way for supporting growth in real estate? We spoke about it, Tom. Property is intrinsic to the economic health and prosperity of this nation. Let's make real estate work faster. How do the state governments make most of their money? Real estate transactions. Let's mobilize Australians to do this more effectively. And agents and property managers, Tom, are in the hot seat to make it happen. But the government needs to change the rules. Now, at a federal level, the Treasurer's come out saying we need to embrace innovation. The Prime Minister has come out a year or so ago, Tom, and he said Australia needs to be a leading digital economy by 2030. Great. That is what the future looks like for us. And there's a whole bunch of things riding on the coattails of that. However, they need to shape and enable policy and legislation for Australia to embrace technology. I can get off my soapbox now.
No, I can tell. I can tell from the tone, volume, and the speed of what you're saying. You've got a very deep belief in it. and that you believe that it's potentially a blockage, and it's um, limiting the opportunities that we have. But you are so right, Phil. You are so right. What used to look like it would take 6 months to do, I mean, for God's sake, we were able to stop the nation in an hour. Like things would just stop, right? Then they would open up, within, a day's notice. We've learned that if you really want something, it can get done, right? So I think what happens is I hope, I really do hope, and I do hope the government turns around. And I had to fill out a form on some administration stuff to do with real estate, and I thought to myself, how it said this is going to take 6 weeks, and I thought to myself, what, to put a stamp on a form that goes in? Why is that 6 weeks, man? We've been able to get people tested for an illness, have a passport put on their phone in no time, and you're worrying about a piece of paper that's got to go through some clerk, right? So I get it. Now, Phil, being mindful of time, I'm going to quickly run through some of the other bits of technology. One of them is artificial intelligence, and that to me sounded like it was Elon Musk type thing, but now it's the first national office out in regional Australia has got it. The local real estate business in Punchbowl Greenacre has got it, and that is very simple. Some code that goes in to your database. It then goes to realestate.com and domain. It goes to CoreLogic RP data. It's a little bit like Google Maps. It quickly does this calculation and says, hey, these are the 20 people, Mr. or Mrs. Agent, you need to call today. These are the reasons why you're going to call them. There's a new property that's come onto the market in their street. You should let them know that. So what we've seen is the emergence, and there's a few tools around. Rita is one. I don't have a relationship with them, but it's one that I know of, Rita, where it actually makes it easier for the agent to do their job, because they're actually told who to call and what to say. The artificial intelligence doesn't make the calls. Having said that, they do actually send the text messages. And that's another bit of thing that's happening, where text messaging now is sky high in business, Phil. Like text, if you think about it, they're personable. We've got wearable devices like an iPhone, iWatch, your iPad, which means that a message can be with you at all times. And there's this thing I noticed, the need to respond to a text when you get it, unlike an email. And you've seen all these tech firms pop up where they're actually producing technology that allows you to actually be that high-tech, high-touch agent. I'm not talking about text messages replacing a conversation. I'm talking about complementing a conversation and allowing you to actually have touch points on scale to a bigger audience. Big tip, by the way, Phil. I've learned this. If I go in and have a meeting with someone and I'm pitching for business, if I send them a text message after the meeting with an emoji, and I get a response from the person with an emoji, I'm normally in. It says to me, we've connected. Very interesting. So I would urge every real estate agent, try it. Send an emoji text message. Hey, great seeing you today. Look forward to seeing you in 2 days, where I'll give you my proposal, and then maybe a thumbs up or thank you emoji. If you get a text message back with a, thank you, maybe a gratitude, thank you emoji, it basically means, hey, we're talking the same language. Having said that, Phil, if you don't get a text.
So we need to upgrade then, Tom. Facts tell, emojis sell.
Oh, I like that. Facts tell, emojis sell. 100%. 100%.
I'll have to try that. There's a certain sense you cross a barrier when you start sort of communicating through emojis, right? It's the same whole thing around trust, right? If there's trust in a relationship, the terms become negotiable. I think as you layer out developing trust, if you can shift it into a an emoji type sort of connectivity, it means that you're generating trust in that relationship. There's happiness to be operating and communicating on that basis. I'm going to try that, mate. I don't mind it. It's very tactical. It's smart though. It's smart.
And then Phil, you've got other stuff like, we talked about it, which is the buy now, pay later, and that's really infiltrated. I know I've got a relationship with VPA campaign agents at Watts. You've got a relationship, or I think they've sponsored things in the past called ListSure. There's a few others out there, but the concept is that via digital means that you can actually quickly get a marketing campaign signed off, no money to pay. It all gets sorted down the track when you become cash rich, because at the moment you might be asset rich till that property gets disposed. You've got things like, example, that's another digital business, before you bid, typical. They've solved a good problem, because what happens, Phil, and this is becoming stock standard, I want to go buy a property at auction. I keep missing out, like in this market. I spend $800 each time on a pest and building, right? I then start getting annoyed because I'm on the underbidder. I've already spent four times of 4 eighths of $3,200. The lawyers hit me up for a few $100 each time he looks at the contract, right? So it gets quite expensive missing out at auctions, right? So then you turn around and say, well, I'm going to discount auctions. I'm only going to look at for sales, right? So I don't actually put myself in a commercially negative spot by missing out. But now things like before you bid, I actually don't know whether there's any others in the marketplace. You amortize the cost of the pest and building amongst all the bidders on that property. So what actually happens is that, 10 losers, 1 winner, it's all spread between them, the cost of the reports. So these are intelligent, solving problem things. They're probably, the main ones. And of course, digital proposals, I think, are really, really good too. For instance, Phil, you get a real estate agent says, I'm coming out to value your property. I'm sending you a text message, and within 1 minute, you got a text message that's given you pretty much a Vogue-looking electronic magazine of what the agent's about. So it's you're doing persuasion, as Dr. Robert Cialdini says. They're selling you before you even go there. They're priming you up for the decision by having really, top of the line pre-list material for you to look at before you actually sign up.
Why wouldn't you be embracing this technology? You talk about AI. That some of this technology has a bit of a stigma around it, like AI. People think it's like this magical thing. The way you explained it for the layman is pretty simple. It's just getting someone to go and look inside something to give you some information that you can use more effectively. High tech, high touch. Everyone used to talk back in the day, Tom. You probably heard it bandied around, this whole notion of big data. Big data was the big thing. Well, no, it's just really a thing that talks to everything, brings it all together, gives you greater intelligence. So, I think it's important that we demystify some of the technology in real estate, and also be clear about the different sort of technology available to real estate agents. And we spoke about managed and buy now, pay later. Mate, that's fintech. That's financial technology, which has an application inside of real estate. Then you have some pure type of prop tech type businesses and sort of the aggregation or curation of pest and building inspections. That's smart tech, mate. Specifically for real estate. So you're going to get adjacencies that look into real estate and they can apply it. I think long overdue, the change of payments inside of real estate. How long did it take them to get PEXA up and running, mate, to change the way in which contracts are done? It is green fields where it's early days for technology in real estate. What a great time to be in real estate to see this pan out. COVID has been that enabler, but you're going to see a lot of change, Tom, a lot of change moving forward as agents. And I think universally all agents will accept it. Now, one of the big things you need to ask yourself as a company or as real estate agents or as a principal is that how much tech do you need? A lot of tech out there which proclaims to do some pretty cool stuff, which is really just, that hasn't really sort of changed things too much. So if you're over tech, it gets really complicated. You've got to choose and be very specific about the tech that you leverage to get it right. I would say, Tom, if you're not using text message marketing, and let's remember, text messages have been around for nearly 20 years now, Tom. I remember I was out in San Francisco for an Indian, and they said that text message over anything else has more pickup rate than any other things, because most people will look at a text message within like a minute of it arriving on their phone. And there is an expectation that you get back to them. Get a part of your technology mix to have those capabilities. There's also technology, Tom, which allows you to leave direct voicemails on people's voicemails without actually having to do it. They just get a message saying, hey, you've missed a call. And there it is. G'day, how you going? It's Phil from Phil's Real Estate. Something's come on the market. This tech is all available. And guess what? It's pretty cost effective as well. It's not going to cost you an arm and a leg.
Well, everything I mentioned there, Phil, I deliberately went into stuff that I can consider more cutting edge than bleeding edge. I'm not interested in bleeding edge. I'm not interested in experimental stuff that's got low probability of execution, but if it comes off, it's just incredible. What I'm talking about now, and when you said is why aren't people adopting it, I think they are. I think that if you're the number one or number two office in a specific core area, if I were to go off and get a map, I would say that most of the number one and number two offices, if you went in there and you said to them, hey, tell us what are the 5 or 6 biggest pieces of technology that's supporting your business, I would say that most of these businesses are in there. So I suppose the reason why we're having this conversation is to that remaining 90%, I'm letting you know that you are essentially operating with limitations, but more importantly, you're giving competitors an unfair advantage of standing out. I've got to say to you, Phil, I want to keep talking more and more. I want to talk about technology for the layman because I reckon there's the gap, right? I think you're right. A lot of people get overwhelmed and scared that they'll just say, hey, this is not me. I want to talk about technology for the person that is the non-tech person because I've got to tell you, it's cheaper and easier than what you think it has to be. But Phil, I might let you to close off. I know you had something to say, and then we've kept our viewers and podcast listeners longer than normal.
Oh, mate, no, I was just going to add to it. Technology should be simple for your business. And remember, like the technology we've spoken about today, I guess there's 2 streams of technology. There's a technology which is there to potentially disrupt the way in which real estate happens today. For example, removal of real estate agents. That's not the tech that we're talking about. My view, and no doubt, Tom, you would echo this view, is that real estate agents and property managers are critical to real estate transactions in Australia to get the best outcomes for consumers. I absolutely believe that. Real estate professionals in every transaction, property management or the sales, better results for consumers. And everything, when I view technology, needs to be about better results for Australians, better results for consumers, whether that's at the buying and the selling of property, the owning and renting of property, or the securing of property through finance. Better customer outcomes is the way in which we should approach any conversations around technology. So when you're looking at technology in your business, you need to think about how is this technology going to ensure a better outcome for my customers? And that should be your guiding light and your guiding force. And you should look at any implementation of technology to that regards. Now, some of that might be an efficiency gain or benefit. Some of it might be a cost gain and benefit. But everything for technology in real estate, high tech, high touch. Use technology to do the stuff that you don't need to do to give you more time to add value to the consumer, to the vendor, to the buyer, to the investor, to the tradie, to the tenant. That's how I'd be framing any technology discussion, mate.
Phil, Taryn, thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you next week. And I've also just diarised, as we've been speaking, 10th of December, Women in Real Estate Awards. Looking forward to it. Off the top of my head, it's a Friday night. Yes, it is. So I'll see you then. Thanks a lot, Phil.
Good one, Tom. See you, mate.